climate is in top focus at this year's Bloomberg New Economy Forum, which brings together top political and business leaders. On this final day of the event, CNE's Julie Yu is joined by a special guest from the Maldives. Julie, over to you.
All right, Shauna, thank you very much. As we all know, Maldives is a beautiful nation under the looming threat of 80% of its land being submerged by water by 2050 at a rate of climate change right now. A grim prediction fueled by rising sea levels and also climate change. To tell us more about this, I'm joined by Aminath Shauna. She is the Maldivian Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Technology. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. It's so good to see you. I believe the last time we spoke was back in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt for COP27. A lot has changed since then, but one thing that hasn't changed is the challenges that your country is facing due to climate change and the threat of rising sea levels. Could you tell us some of the specific threats and vulnerabilities that people in Maldives are facing right now?
Thanks for having me, and it's very good to see you again. For the Maldives, we are 1,200 islands, and most of our islands are just about 1 meter above sea level. Global sea level rise and climate change is an existential threat for us because we are observing sea level rise of 3 to 4 millimeters per year. And we have seen temperature increases of 1.1 degrees Celsius. So what that means to us is our entire nation's protection and survival really depends on the health of our reefs. With temperature increases, it bleaches our corals. And it could mean the death of our coral reefs. We have also seen more flooding because of heavy rainfall patterns, and we've also seen an alarming rate of erosion in our islands. We have seen more tidal swells than we used to see before. So these impacts is what we live with every day now, and we have seen more extreme weather events as well.
It's a very worrying situation. Minister, you've stressed in the past a number of times that despite all this, Maldives is not just going to stand around and wait for the world to rescue it, but you will come up with your own ideas, own actions to survive. Could you share with us some of those plans in action?
We have been talking about this since the 80s. The first COP Rio summit, all of these things. And we know that the world has not come together to help us effectively and in time for us to be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. We are using about 30% of our own domestic resources on adaptation. Every single island in the Maldives has run out of fresh water. So we are building desalination plants on every single island. We are introducing ways on how we could harvest our rain and combine with desalination plants to provide fresh water for our people. We are also using hard engineering solutions like coastal protection and even reclamation in some islands where the land is raised more than what we have in our normal islands. It is a double-edged sword for us because such hard engineering solutions also harms our fragile environment as well. But in addition to these things, we are also looking into how conservation helps our adaptation as well. So we have protected 13% of our reef area, which is over 55,000 hectares of reef area, and using nature-based solutions on how we could possibly use it as a defense mechanism against tidal swells and coastal erosion. We are also looking into ways of how we could utilize emerging and new technology that could help us collect data and that will help us in terms of better designs for our coastal protection and our adaptation measures. So, like you said, we're not waiting for the world to come to us, but we are already doing it.
I hear that you're going big on solar. Could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. For us, our contribution to climate change is just 0.003%. But that doesn't mean that we will have to wait again for the world to come together on it. For us, investing in renewables, which is abundance, which we have, sunshine is an abundance in the Maldives, and utilizing that solar power to fuel our economy is one of our key priorities. And why we're doing it is because we're already spending 10% of our GDP on importing fossil fuel to our country. So it makes not just environmental sense for us, but a developmental sense as well. And investing in renewables means for us that we will have fiscal space to be able to spend on education, on healthcare, and other developmental needs. So essentially, it becomes an adaptation as well for us. And as a country that is so heavily dependent on imported fossil fuel and transforming our economy to one fueled by sunshine, that really helps us in financial ways as well. All the foreign exchange outflows is reduced and it helps us. It's a win-win from all senses. So we do have a target to reach net zero by 2030, and currently we are at we have 13% of peak demand from renewables. In a couple of years, about 26% of our energy source will be from renewable sources.
You talked about money. All these climate initiatives takes money to do it. Since COP27, have you seen much changes in terms of climate financing or engagement, international community reaching out to you to fight climate change together?
Disappointingly, no. And we have been approved 2 projects from the GCF, and it takes years for the money to reach the Maldives. And the preparatory time it takes is about at least 3 to 4 years, and for it to reach the Maldives, total 4 to 5 years. And by the time the money does come to the Maldives, the entire reality has changed, because we're talking about coastal erosion. We're talking about running out of fresh water. People can't wait for the money to come in 5 years to be able to address the issue of erosion. So what then happens next is we have to inject money from our domestic revenue and from our domestic budget to do it. So currently we're spending over 30% of our domestic budget on adaptation needs.
And just around the corner, of course, we have COP28 coming up. We didn't get to that subject just now, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot discussed there in terms of loss and damage fund. Hopefully that will be discussed and we'll see some progress there. Minister, thank you very much for joining us today. So back to you. I've been speaking to Aminath Shauna, Environment Minister of Maldives. Back to you, Shah.